The big news out of Washington, D.C., it's happening right now, is there has finally been an arrest after years now in that pipe bomb case, which has been something that a lot of you have brought up over the years. And there has not been what we've seen, a lot of movement. But now, of course, you have a new president. You have a new FBI. There is not only movement within the first year, there has been an arrest.
That a suspect, Brian Cole of Woodbridge, Virginia, has been arrested by the FBI in connection with those pipe bombs that were placed at both the DNC headquarters and the RNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. They were allegedly placed there the night before January 6th at these places. And one of the big questions has been something plaguing the prior administration because nothing happened about this. And at the time, Kamala Harris herself spoke in front of the DNC on January 6th while these devices were there. They were not found by Secret Service. They were found after she spoke, and they were placed the night before. It's been something that, especially within the conservative world, of like, hey, you spent so much time focusing on the January 6th riot, but there was an alleged terrorist, someone who placed weapons of mass destruction, pipe bombs, at the headquarters of the two major political parties in the United States. And you did nothing on it. They had footage of the individual. They had all the resources of the federal government, and they did nothing. So there's been these questions. It's led to a lot of conspiracy theories about a cover-up and why nothing had been done. We know this was a promise of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino when they took over at the FBI. They have been, Kash Patel was confirmed in February, late February, so he's about 9, just shy of 10 months on the job. And what we're looking at now is an arrest of an individual from Virginia. And we're expecting an arraignment today of this individual around 1 p.m. Eastern time, and as well a press conference from the FBI on this that we should get some more information.
The person was in Woodbridge, Virginia, which is not very far from Washington, D.C. You're talking about within an hour. You drive through it very often. I spent some time in Woodbridge. This is essentially just maybe a little outside of a suburb. So they didn't have to go far to find the perpetrator of this, who has been clearly hanging out in this area for 5 years. Probably thought at this point had gotten away with this. And never would have probably thought 5 years later, I think when you probably hit 2 years, 3 years, you're like, I don't think I need to lay low anymore. I'm probably good. But no, you have a new FBI in town, maybe that are actually doing their jobs, and this is what happens. You get an arrest. This is a flashback just from this past May where they brought this up specifically. This is Dan Bongino on Fox and Friends saying, look, we know that this is one of those open-ended question mark, not closed cases at this point, and we're going to try to make sure people understand that we need to rebuild trust in the FBI. Let's take a listen.
We had to fix it and rebuild public trust. One of the ways to do it is these cases of significant public interest that matter. We had 2 pipe bombs planted on January 6th. I mean, we were told by partisan actors out there this was the insurrection, the world was going to fall apart, and no one seemed to show any interest in this case. The second we got in, I put a team on it, and I said, I want answers on this. And I'm pretty confident that we're closing in on some suspects.
Of course, it brings that up just a handful of months ago, and now here we are.
What plays out who this individual is, what their motivations were, it may be that they were a crazy person that had no political motivation. It could be that they were very politically motivated. We will hopefully find that out, and I assume we will through the course of a trial as they've arrested this person now. But what was so shocking is that this happened, an act of terrorism, regardless if they blew up or not, which they thankfully did not. I think that everyone should be thankful that 2 bombs did not blow up that were viable, that could have maimed or killed many people. But the partisan aspect of the FBI, for some reason, shifted away from 2 bombs placed in Washington, D.C., and focused only on people that participated in the riot.
The visuals were not as fun. It probably wasn't as easy because you couldn't just clearly see and identify who these people were. It was very easy to identify who a lot of the January 6th rioters were because there they were. There were their faces. We have facial technology. It wasn't that hard to find. Some were celebrities for that matter. So it certainly wasn't near as fun to go after what was this, which could have caused severe damage, severe chaos. What brings me a lot of hope is that there was some honesty and truth coming from Dan Bongino and the FBI publicly months ago. they gave you a little bit of an inside scoop of what was happening, what they were working on, and now we see the fruits of that labor. That is not how things felt like the last decade or so, where we didn't really know what was going on, and occasionally you'd have a raid, or you would have something like that would happen, and you'd wake up to these moments. No, he actually gave pretty fair warning back in May. I mean, look, if this guy, if he end up being the person, and you heard back in May that they were on your tail, you think you'd be getting out of Woodbridge.
Well, and here's where the distrust in the FBI, I think, under the previous administration eroded even further and showed that they were more interested in partisan action, going after individuals that they could politically target. The end goal was to damage the reputation and future political viability of President Trump, is because what some of the reporting is, a lot of this evidence that they collected that led them to this individual, it wasn't new evidence. The FBI had it back then. So they could have followed this trail to the logical end. Instead, what did they focus on? January 6th, they got a special counsel, Jack Smith. We talked about him yesterday, going after sitting U.S. senators. Why? That's what they wanted to do. They wanted the political use of the DOJ and our system of justice to go after their political enemies instead of tracking down someone that could have actually killed and maimed many people with these bombs that were placed at both the political headquarters. It is so apparent that the narrative that would have come out of this was not something the FBI was interested in pursuing, so they did not. They let it stall out, they moved on, and they pursued all the way to Jack Smith trying to take down President Trump instead of putting this person behind bars that is an actual criminal, actual terrorist. If all these allegations are proven true in court, that is what we are looking at here today. It shows the indictment on the Christopher Wray-led FBI much more than anything else. They could have gotten this person and chose not to. This is a different FBI, and it doesn't fall on deaf ears here that the administration has been taking incoming from the media against who? Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, going after them all this week with all these silly stories in the media. We talked about it with Rick Grinnell yesterday, trying to discredit them. And then what do they do today? They deliver on promises that they said they were going to do.
Now, of course, there has been, like as Will said, attacks on Dan Bongino and on Kash Patel. And look, I think anyone in politics, anyone who's running our country should not be immune to really being dug into what they're doing, what they're working on, if it's going to be what they want. However, as Will said, you got to make sure, especially when you're one of those people who start sharing these stories, sharing these rumors, or whatever it may be, or causing just chaos, to remember that some of those actors that are starting that are not on our side, and they are doing it intentionally just to disrupt what's going on in the government.